Hello, Maria. Thank you for joining Female Frequency, sister.
Thank you so much, Jody. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone.
Wow, you were very dedicated to women in mythology. You're up at 7 a.m.,
6 a.m.
6 a.m.
6
Yeah.
a.m. here. It's definitely a labor of love. Keeps me connected with myself, with fantastic women from all over the world, with my passion for myths. And I'm in a phase of my life where I'm a very busy mother. I'm a full-time mother, have two children under the age of 3. So the moments that I have for my work, for myself, are very early in the morning or very late at night after they fall asleep. So yes, here I am holding my thread, doing the work I love.
Well, let's do it because it takes sisters like us to keep that momentum going and to keep talking about goddess traditions and how to keep connecting ourselves with our body and the earth. And I'd love how you and I have both been talking about creativity and how stress can block creativity. And I love how you really say that myths are more than just stories, that myths are a mirror and a map.
Yes, so the way I look into myths is that they're not just themes, stories, legends, myths, fairy tales for us to study to, let's say, understand a time in the past, or that they are just the stories for entertainment. These are stories that hold deep wisdom for us. They are mirrors because they show us who we are. They show us where we've come from. They make us understand our past journey. And they're also maps because they guide us forward. They gives us tool. They help us understand and mirror that process of becoming and where do we want to go and the person we want to be, giving us tips on how to get there. The way also we look at myth now through women in mythology is they are not to have one moral, but they are here to problematize behavior. They are here to make us think deeper about our lives.
I love it. Let's get into a couple of these. Um, but wait, I do have a question before that. Was there a moment that sparked you into this research and into
Mm,
these type of healing arts?
well, I'm a historian, so I've kind of always I studied Greek mythology and some other mythologies and the study of myth when I was in university. And then later, when I was doing my master's, I studied with mythologist Martin Shaw, and I could see how he was applying myths to contemporary times. It wasn't really about studying the past or for only academic peers. It was really how can we apply that wisdom to today's world? How can it make a difference in us living in urban jungles,
Yeah.
just are busy with our lives? How can we better our lives with myth? And I was completely captivated by it. After that, I started researching more female authors because that was a lot of my passion. It's understanding my life as a woman. It's something that's very important to me. And slowly I started organizing courses and groups for women, and that took shape as Women and Mythology, in which today I have a podcast, I deliver programs, I have a mentorship, and etc.
I'm going to make sure we have all of that information in the show notes because you have a couple of workshops on creativity that I think a lot of the listeners may be really interested in.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yes. So lately, I feel like I've been using humor as an antidote to help me through some of these stressful times. And the goddess traditions used humor. And I'd love for you to share and teach me a little bit more about the goddess Baubo, because I feel like she was demonized as in a similar way that Medusa was, and how we can really use that feminist perspective to look at this goddess.
Yes, of course. So Baubo, I would say that different from Medusa, Medusa was definitely demonized, right? She became that monster. Um, Baubo feels like it was buried.
Mm.
Maybe if you stop a person in the middle of the street and show an image of Medusa, they will know. They will know. An average person might say, oh, this is something of Greek mythology. This is a mythological creature. They might name her Medusa. They might say this is a monster. However, with Baubo, if they look at the sculpture of Baubo, if they look, or even an artistic representation, let's say a contemporary artistic representation of Baubo, I don't think they would be able to name it. She has been completely buried for women. And she actually holds so much power for us. She is
Let's
a
unearth
little,
her. Let's do it.
yes. So she is a little goddess. She appears very much in the stories of Demeter in Greek mythology. So Demeter is the earth goddess, the mother goddess in many ways. And in one of the tales, Demeter has her daughter Persephone kidnapped, and in other versions, Persephone voluntarily goes. She descends to the underworld where she marries Hades, and from goddess of spring, Persephone, she also becomes the goddess of underworld. There's a whole story there for Persephone, the life, death, life, her descent. It's so much beauty there. But if we're focusing on Baubo, we need to look at those who remained on the topside world as Persephone descends. That is Demeter. She stays, and as a loving mother, she falls into a tremendous depression because her daughter left and she doesn't understand. She does not know where she is. She thinks she's been completely taken and will never return. And Demeter falls into a depression, meaning she has no energy.
Mm.
As the goddess of the earth, she's the one responsible for the harvest, for the things to grow, for the babies to grow in women's belly, for all that is giving. And in her depression, nothing grows on the land. No babies grow in women's belly. There are no boughs given to the dead. And the world, the topside world, starts to wither in many ways. And in one of the versions, Demeter is walking down in her depression. She hasn't bathed. She is this beautiful goddess. If you look for an image of her, she's a beautiful goddess. She hasn't bathed, she's in rags now. And she just falls near a well. She kind of sits down near a well. And there she is, you know, unrecognizable, just sitting there. And suddenly a little goddess appears, starts walking towards her, this woman, and it's kind of sort of a woman. So she has her vulva as her mouth and her eyes as her breasts. So this is already a big image for us.
Yes.
And she comes dancing, moving her body in kind of a sensual way. Demeter looks at that and she cannot help herself, but she smiles just a little. You see, she's already lifting herself from that state she is in. And then Baubo comes very close to her and whispers in her ear some jokes. We don't know exactly the jokes. I would say we don't know because there are different jokes for different women. There are
Yeah.
different things that were going to be said to lift the depression for different women. There are as many ways as there are women in this world. But as she tells these jokes, Demeter starts laughing and laughing and laughing. And slowly she falls into a full belly laugh. And after this huge laughter, that kind of laughter that you might have experienced before, Jody, where your
Yeah.
cheeks hurt, your eyes, it's filled with tears. You can barely see in front of you because your eyes are so closed with laughter and your belly and everything is vibrating. That kind of laughter. That awakens Demeter from her terrible depression. And with that, she is reanimated to continue her search for Persephone, who later, of course, is restored as Demeter continues her search. She pledges Zeus, she gets the help of Helios, and the story goes on. But if we look into this kind of moment of Baubo, who is she? She is the goddess of the body in many ways, connected to breast and vulva. So we can look at the symbolism of those. And she tells, you were talking about being playful, humor, laughter. She brings laughter forward. So, laughter for a woman has the power of opening spaces. It allows us to breathe. When we laugh, we breathe, and we breathe in some ways unsanctioned. right? Without counting our breath, without holding our breath, without holding our body.
Yeah,
But we
without managing it.
Exactly. We open ourselves. And when a woman breathes fully, she will unlock spaces that were locked before. She will create space in her soul, in her body, in her psyche for something new, for new energy to be restored. So we see that in the story of Demeter. And would love your thoughts before we go into the symbolism of the breast and the vulva.
Well, shoot, to recap, I mean, what I'm really listening to is being connected back to the body. Like we're instantly seeing the female form with the vulva and the breast, but it's also the breathing and being able to unlock things. Um,
Mm.
so I was struck with that right away. Um, yeah, I think for females, like my boobs can cause me stress sometimes. They can cause me joy most of the time. Um, so I can't wait to learn more. In my vulva, I mean, I do meditate a lot, and I feel like I try to bring up my breathing techniques up. And there are more times if I'm trying to not think myself through things, but feel myself through things. The vulva comes into consciousness. So I'm just so curious, so much more.
I love what you said about the bodily wisdom. It's very much connected to the body, and it is. If we look into mythology as these different goddesses with these different archetypes, right, with these different
Yeah.
energies, if, for example, Athena had approached Demeter, it would feel very different. Athena is the goddess of warfare, of strategy. If she had come to talk to Demeter, maybe Demeter wouldn't even hear and listen to her because that was how depressed she was, right? But Athena would come with a very different discourse. She would be saying about how can we go and conquer Hades? How
Mm,
can we go and, and strategically enter the underworld to be able to find Persephone? She would be thinking logically about Demeter's depression. She would try to reason with her.
yeah.
But that is not what Demeter needed. That would never be enough to awaken Demeter from that depression. What was needed was bodily wisdom, was an experience with the body, was an experience of release as well, which is what laughter brings.
Oh, I love it.
So it's moving definitely from the head, from the intellect down to the wisdom of the body. And these are the symbols of the breast and the vulva. So I know you're interested in the breast, so I'll start with the vulva so we can go deeper on the breast. Say the vulva is the prima materia, so it's like the most primal of a woman. It's the most primal part of a woman. And in this, to speak from your vulva means to speak from the most primal, the most wild, the most depth, the most truth of a woman. I would always say to my participants in my classes at Women in Mythology, I would always say, okay, if you are to approach a situation, let's say with your partner or even with yourself in the mirror,
Yeah.
and you are to say the most with your vulva, how would that sound like? If you are to say your deepest truth, how would that sound like? In a certain situation, if it was your vulva to respond, how would it respond? Because it's probably very different than the way we tend to approach situations or respond to things. The
I,
vulva speaks from the depth.
I can't wait to do this exercise for this next month. I think it's perfect timing as we've been talking about like creativity, and we've just celebrated Earth Day a couple of days yesterday, as we record this. So I'm really excited about this.
Well, that's wonderful. Yes. Remember, the vulva does not lie, right? Even when we think about pleasure, because we relate very much the vulva to pleasure, when we think about pleasure for a woman, it does not lie. So follow that, follow the primal, follow the truth of it. When we look at to the vulva, when we think of Baubo as speaking from the vulva, It's interesting to also say that these figurines, so I know you're going to put an image up here for those who are not just listening, but also watching. This figurine was found, many of them, in the temples of Demeter. So these are ancient figurines
Yeah.
that these little sculptures, and they were found in the temples of Demeter, showing as well how the earth goddess and mother goddess, because of her relationship with Persephone, she is one of the mothers of Greek mythology, one of the mother archetypes in Greek mythology. The She has bodily wisdom. It's the Baubo did not have a temple of her own in Greek myth and in Greek society. She was devoted to Demeter, and she had perhaps an altar, a space within the temples of Demeter. But it was there that she received her offerings and things like that. And women would have communion with her through the stories and temples and offerings to Demeter as well.
I see.
So now let's dive into
Yeah, let's
the
keep the topic on the body and our female experiences with our breasts. I
so
just, and to explain it just a little bit further, um, s- I was recently looking at a picture of myself, like since you and I've been making our time together, and I just was like, I saw myself and I got judgy on myself. It was like, put a bra on. And it's just, I was like, ooh, who's the mean girl? And then another girlfriend of mine was at her beautiful art installation and we were looking at pictures of ourselves. And she's like, my boobs are so big, also in that mean girl tone. So I'm like, "Ugh, our body's causing us stress, but yet it's so powerful. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about the breasts here.
And it's interesting that not just you're being mean towards your body, but towards a very feminine
Yeah.
aspect of your body, towards a very, again, primal, towards a very, at the same time, strong but gentle part of your body, right? One that is so personal, so intimate, so true to a woman. The breast, if you think about it, they feel everything. They are, in some ways, a sensory organ. They feel not just cold and heat, but they also feel anger. They also feel stress. They also feel, pleasure and
Mm-hmm.
passion.
Mm-hmm.
They are also kind of bursting with creativity. And they symbolize in myth, if we look at it at their symbolic language, they symbolize life source across different cultures and myths, they are a primal image of nourishment, of care,
Mm-hmm.
of power as well, and of creation. Of course, because we have this image, the breast is associated with the image of milk and the symbol of milk, which is pure nourishment and purity because of its color. So the breast for the woman is just this very powerful thing. It's the breast, and you said your friend mentioned, oh, my breasts are too big.
Yeah.
Breasts are, breast it's not that it should be big. Like I have very small breasts and I don't want to be trapped in the idea that they should be a certain size.
Me
Every
either.
size is welcomed. But I
Yeah.
would say mythologically
Yeah.
speaking, the breasts are made to be vast. The breasts are made to be wide because they are abundance. They are fertility, not just for children, right? For the community, let's say, but also for the soil, for the earth. We look into the breast as kind of Gaia
Mm,
as well, like the roundness of Gaia, the wholeness of Gaia, of that. And they are connected to our breath, to our depths. If we think about it, even when we
yeah.
think of the image of milk,
Yeah.
milk is being created not in the breast, but way deeper in the body. And it's created from our bloodstream. I don't know if you know that about milk. I was just recently breastfeeding two children, so I kind of got very much into milk and breasts in my house. But it's actually made from our blood, the milk. So we have a beautiful alchemical transformation happening from blood to milk, from an image of life, death, and sacrifice, which is the image of blood, into pure nourishment and clarity, which is the milk. And the breast is like the crucible that holds that transformation, that allows that transformation to happen. Would you like to bring some thoughts before I bring a few more ideas in?
I had to take a deep breath. Yeah. I mean, that is the definition of alchemy.
It is it's
Yeah.
definition of alchemy, transforming into gold because milk is gold, right? And transforming all of that sacrifice, all that blood,
Yeah.
absolutely, it's magical. If we think about it, it's of course science explains it, and you can Google it and understand the entire scientific um, process that is happening in a woman's body. But it's
Sure.
absolutely magical.
It is magical because there's electrical currents that are happening, and somewhere along the way that current had to start. So yeah, there's magic involved.
And it's interesting that you were saying about like this is the ultimate alchemical process, right? Which was the alchemist wanted to create gold in
Yeah.
the outer world and find that individuation, the self, the gold within. And the areola in the breast, the word areola comes from the Latin meaning arum, which is gold. So we have again there another connection.
Yeah.
So beautiful, no?
It's so
If you look at
beautiful.
breast, yes, and tell your friend that areola comes from arum. Arum means gold in Latin. Next time you look at your breast, next time you consider being a mean girl to your breast, look at it and think, oh, my breasts are made of gold. My breasts are adorned with gold.
My breasts are made of gold.
And well,
Thank you.
these golden connections
Mhm.
that it clearly evolve and it brings the sacredness of the feminine. It becomes very life-giving as well. It kind of reminds us of that. There are many mythologies that showcase the power of a woman's breast in Egyptian mythology, African
Mm.
mythology, even Christian mythology. So, our Western world with Christianity, how many images of Mary
Yeah.
breastfeeding, right? Jesus doesn't exist. There's so many. There's so many. We see it inside churches, we see it in different places. And I think a lot of us in today's world, maybe we look at that image and we think, oh, that's just devotion and sacrifice. Where's the individuality there? But at the same time, do we forget how powerful that is? You know, not speaking from a religious faith-based perspective, but from a mythological perspective, the Christian story is a myth to
Yeah.
feed the God. That is a powerful thing. What are some of your thoughts that you would like to bring on breast, Jody?
I think just mainly my personal experience of how I know that I can be such an advocate for women's rights and helping women really get to know themselves. And yet I can still be a mean girl sometimes, even to my own self. And just hearing more stories like this, it, it just deepens my awareness to myself in such a beautiful way. I think you're such a great messenger for the female frequency to really help us understand ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think, as you said, like even when we have all this information, when we have all this knowing, sometimes as intellectuals, some things have grounded and rooted within us, we still are daughters of the patriarchy, right? So we kind of need to unlearn that so we can stop being those mean girls to ourselves or others. Um, I know you were very interested in creativity. So I just
Yeah.
want to bring as well breast as a symbol of the reservoir for feminine creativity.
Tell
I think
us.
that's very, very interesting because they are not just symbols of nourishment, but they are also metaphors for nurturing ideas, for fostering growth for ourselves and others, bringing life. literal or creative into the world. When there's a baby being born in a story or a baby being fed in a story, I wouldn't think, and symbolically, how I teach at Women in Mythology is not to see this as a literal physical baby in our life, but is what are your creations? So to give birth in a story is to birth something into the world. It could be a project, it could be a new self, it could be, something, a book, a painting, a new job, a new home, a garden, anything. And to nourish it and to put it in your breast, to feed it, is how do you give constant attention? How do you give care to this project? How to give care to this idea? So I would also invite women to think, okay, you've birthed many things in your life and
Yeah.
in, out to our world. Are you feeding it? How can you keep it close to your breast? A baby to be safe, to be calm, right? To be nourished, especially a newborn baby, wants to be close to a mother's breast. It wants to be there, tucked into her chest, next to her breast. Maybe it's sucking, maybe it's not, but it's just there, tucked into the breast. The same. How do you keep your ideas? How do you keep your projects close to your breast, close to this place of source, of this place of vitality and nourishment?
I'll be getting back to you on how I've started incorporating that into my lifestyle.
Yeah, I would love to know.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for that journey.
Mm.
Wow. What else are you up to with your research and what else you got going on in your um, research dimension of your life?
So with women in mythology, I'm very much focused on women's sovereignty. So
Okay.
I call it the sovereignty of women's soul is how can we feel like the sovereigns of ourself, right? That we don't feel that we don't exist to make someone else happy, to fit into someone else's ideas of what's right and what life is. And how can we retrieve this sovereignty so we can really live our full life, so we can
Yeah.
follow our bliss? And I do that very much through the myths. I bring different myths for different aspects. Sovereignty is a very big theme that has so many different details to it, different facets to it. It's about body and claiming our bodies and being comfortable and loving towards our body. It's also about dismantling our fears. It's about pursuing our creative life. It's about letting go of addictions. It's about letting go of shame as well. It's reconnecting with intuition. There's so many tools and so many themes around sovereignty, so I'm very much focused on that. I give workshops and classes in which women can explore different aspects of sovereignty.
I love that. And I like how you brought it back to the intuition because our unique selves is fantastic and helps us love ourselves so much more. So then we definitely stop comparing ourselves to others because we are not their story.
Exactly. It's about really finding who we are and standing, being able to stand in our 2 feet.
Well, thank you so much for these mirrors and maps and these exercises that we can go and see how they can help us connect with ourselves and our body and to the earth. This has been such a great time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jody. Thank you, listeners. It was a pleasure to share a little bit about women in mythology with you.